Imagine this, a billionaire on the brink of losing his everything, his 3 little girls fading away before his eyes. But then, a stranger walks in with nothing but hope, and changes it all. Could one person's belief really defy death? Stick around, you won't believe what happens next. The doctor said his 3 daughters had days to live. Then he walked into the dining room, and what he saw there made him fall to his knees and weep. Leonard Graham hadn't cried in 20 years. Not when he lost his first business. Not when he buried his wife. But the day Dr. Patricia Morrison said, "Your daughters have maybe 2 weeks left." That day, something inside him shattered. Diana, Abigail, Adrielle, 7 years old, dying. Leukemia had stolen everything. Their hair, their energy, their childhood. Now it was coming for their lives. Leonard stood in the hospital wing of his Connecticut home, staring at 3 small bodies in hospital beds, tubes in their arms, machines beeping, their breathing so shallow you had to watch close just to know they were still alive. He'd spent millions, tried everything. Nothing worked. Adrielle, the smallest, opened her eyes. "Daddy, am I going to die?" Leonard's chest tightened. He knelt beside her. "No, baby. I promise your mama I'd protect you." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. He was losing them. What if I told you that in the darkest moment, hope wasn't just a word, it was a force that could rewrite fate? Keep watching, because this story will restore your faith in miracles. The next morning, the house felt like a funeral home. No one spoke. The cook stopped making the girls' meals. The staff whispered in corners. Everyone had given up. Then she walked in. Brenda Anderson, 29. No medical degree, no credentials, just quiet strength in her eyes. Mrs. Carter, the head housekeeper, looked her over. "You're here for the job, honey. Trained nurses don't last 2 days here. This house is waiting for death." Brenda's voice was calm, steady. "Then maybe it needs someone who's not." When Leonard saw her, he barely looked up. "The medical wing is off limits. My daughters need quiet." Brenda didn't move. "Mr. Graham, dying children don't need quiet. They need someone who still believes they're worth saving." Leonard's head snapped up. Anger flashed in his eyes. "What did you just say? Your daughters don't need another person treating them like ghosts. They need someone who sees them as alive." Silence. Leonard stared at this stranger with nothing. No reason to care. No credentials, no logic. But her eyes held something he hadn't seen in months. Hope. "Do what you want," he muttered. "Just stay out of my way." Brenda walked into the girls' room. 3 hospital beds, white walls, the smell of medicine and death. She took off her gloves, touched Diana's face with her bare hand. Diana's eyes opened. "Who are you?" "Someone who's staying." Abigail stirred. "Are you a nurse?" "No, sweetheart. I'm just someone who believes tomorrow's coming." Adrielle whispered. "Everyone treats us like we're already gone." Brenda knelt beside her. "I don't see death when I look at you. I see 3 girls who still have fight left, and I'm not giving up." That night she sang to them a soft lullaby. For the first time in months they slept without fear. Brenda whispered into the darkness. "I couldn't save you, Naomi, but I'll save them." And God, who sees every tear, every prayer, was already moving. But what Leonard didn't know was that in 3 days everything would change. Before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because sometimes when everything feels hopeless, that's when miracles walk through the door. If you've ever needed a reason to believe again, keep watching. The next morning, Leonard woke to something he hadn't heard in over a year. Laughter, faint, fragile, but real. He sat up in bed, his heart pounding. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. But then he heard it again, a soft giggle coming from down the hall. He threw on his robe and walked toward the medical wing. The door was cracked open. Inside, sunlight poured through the windows that had been covered with blackout curtains for months. Brenda stood beside Diana's bed, holding a hairbrush like a microphone. She was singing badly on purpose. And Diana was smiling, actually smiling. Abigail clapped weakly from her bed. Even Adrielle's eyes were open, watching. Leonard froze in the doorway. Brenda noticed him and stopped mid-song. "Good morning, Mr. Graham." He didn't respond. He just stared at his daughters, their faces still pale, still bald, but something was different. They looked awake. "What are you doing?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. Brenda set down the brush. "We're having breakfast. The girls wanted music." "Music?" Leonard's jaw tightened. "They're supposed to be resting." "They've been resting for months, Mr. Graham. Maybe it's time they start living." Leonard opened his mouth to argue, but Diana spoke first. "Daddy. Miss Brenda made us laugh." His chest tightened. He hadn't heard Diana speak a full sentence in weeks. He turned and left without a word. Over the next 2 days, the house began to shift. Brenda didn't follow any rules. She opened windows, played music, brought flowers into the sterile medical wing. She sat with the girls for hours, not checking charts or administering medication, just talking, telling stories, listening. And somehow, impossibly, the girls started responding. They ate more, spoke more, moved more. Dr. Morrison came for her weekly visit. She examined the girls in silence. Her brow furrowed. "Leonard, I don't understand this." She looked up at him, confused. "Their vitals are stabilizing. Their appetite is returning. This shouldn't be happening without treatment." Leonard crossed his arms. "Then explain it." "I can't." Dr. Morrison glanced toward the doorway where Brenda stood quietly folding blankets. "But whatever's happening, don't stop it." That night, Leonard sat in his office, staring at medical reports that no longer made sense. The numbers said his daughters were dying, but his eyes told him something different. He heard footsteps in the hall. Brenda carrying a tray of empty teacups. "Why are you doing this?" he called out. She stopped, turned. "Doing what?" "This," he gestured vaguely. "The music, the stories, the hope. You know they're dying. Why give them false hope?" Brenda's eyes softened. "It's not false hope, Mr. Graham. It's just hope. And sometimes that's the only medicine that matters." She walked away, leaving him alone with his doubts. But deep down, beneath the pride, beneath the fear, Leonard felt something he hadn't felt in months. A flicker of belief. And that terrified him more than anything. 3 days passed. Brenda kept showing up. Every morning at 7, never late, never asking permission. She'd walk into the medical wing like she owned it, pull back the curtains, and let the light flood in. The nurses didn't know what to make of her. She wasn't aggressive. She wasn't rude. She just existed in a way that made the rules feel small. Leonard watched from a distance. He'd stand in the hallway, arms crossed, listening to her talk to his daughters like they had years ahead of them, like there was no diagnosis, no death sentence. It made him angry. One morning, he overheard her in the kitchen talking to Mrs. Carter. "I need party supplies," Brenda said. "Balloons, streamers, cake ingredients." Mrs. Carter blinked. "Party supplies for what?" "The girls turn 7 in 10 days. We're celebrating." The room went silent. Mrs. Carter's face went pale. "Miss Anderson, those girls might not make it to their birthday." Brenda looked her straight in the eye. "Then we make sure they do." Leonard stepped into the kitchen. His voice was ice. "What did you just say?" Brenda turned, calm, unflinching. "I said we're throwing them a birthday party." "A birthday party?" Leonard's jaw clenched. "For children who might not live to see it. You think that's kind? That's cruel." "No, Mr. Graham. What's cruel is treating them like they're already gone. You don't know anything about. I know what it's like to sit beside a hospital bed and watch someone slip away." Her voice cracked just slightly. "And I know the difference between giving up and giving them something to hold on to." Leonard stared at her. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Pain, recognition, something raw. Then he turned and walked out. Brenda didn't stop. She ordered the supplies herself. Paid with her own money, started planning decorations in secret. The nurses whispered. The staff thought she was delusional, but the girls, they came alive. Diana asked what flavor the cake would be. Abigail wanted to wear a dress. Even Adrielle, who barely had the strength to sit up, asked if there would be candles. One afternoon, Brenda did something no one had dared to do. She got the girls into wheelchairs and took them outside. Leonard saw it from his office window. His 3 daughters, bald, pale, wrapped in blankets, sitting in the garden for the first time in months, sunlight on their faces. Brenda kneeling beside them, pointing at flowers, making them smile. Leonard gripped the edge of his desk. This woman had no right, no training, no reason to believe any of this would work. But his daughters were laughing, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd heard that sound. He turned away from the window, his chest tight. "What are you doing to them?" he whispered to the empty room. But deep down, a part of him already knew. She was giving them back their lives. And that meant he'd have to face what he'd been too afraid to give them himself. On the 5th day, something changed. Diana sat up on her own. Not for long, maybe 30 seconds, but she did it. No help, no one asking her to try. She just sat up. Brenda was reading to them when it happened. She paused mid-sentence, watching Diana's small frame straighten against the pillows. "Look at you," Brenda whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Diana smiled, weak but real. "I wanted to see the picture." Abigail reached out and touched her sister's hand. "You did it, Dee." Even Adrielle turned her head, watching with wide eyes. It was small. So small, but it was everything. Dr. Morrison came that afternoon for her scheduled checkup. She examined Diana in silence, then moved to Abigail, then Adrielle. When she finished, she just stood there staring at her clipboard. "What is it?" Leonard asked from the doorway. Dr. Morrison looked up. Her face was pale. "Their white blood cell counts are improving." Leonard straightened. "Improving? How much?" "Enough that I had the lab run the tests twice." She shook her head. "Leonard, this doesn't happen. Not without active treatment. Not with leukemia this aggressive." "So, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't know." She looked toward Brenda, who was quietly arranging flowers by the window. "But something is working." Leonard followed her gaze. Brenda wasn't doing anything medical. She was just there, present, steady. Dr. Morrison lowered her voice. "Whatever's happening in this room, don't question it. Just let it continue." She left. Leonard stood frozen, watching Brenda hum softly as she adjusted the vase. That night, he couldn't sleep. He walked the halls, restless, his mind spinning. For weeks, he'd thrown everything at this disease. Money, science, the best doctors in the world. And a woman with no credentials was doing what none of them could. He found himself standing outside the girls' room. The door was cracked open. Inside, Brenda sat in the chair between the beds, knitting something small and blue. "Why are you still here?" Leonard's voice came out quieter than he intended. "It's past midnight." Brenda didn't look up. "Because they sleep better when someone's close. The nurses can do that. The nurses check vitals. I'm just here." She glanced up at him. "There's a difference." Leonard stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp. His daughters slept peacefully, their breathing steady. He'd avoided this room for weeks. It hurt too much to see them like this. But now they looked different. Not healed, but not dying either. "You really think they're going to make it to their birthday?" he said. It wasn't a question. Brenda set down her knitting. "I think they're fighting, and as long as they're fighting, I'm not giving up." Leonard looked at her. Really looked at her. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Brenda's eyes held something deep. Something broken and beautiful all at once. "Just someone who made a promise," she whispered. Leonard wanted to ask more, but something in her voice stopped him. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Thank you," he said so quietly he wasn't sure she heard. But when he glanced back, Brenda was smiling. And for the first time in months, Leonard Graham felt something he thought was gone forever. Hope. Leonard started avoiding the medical wing. Not because he didn't care, because he cared too much. Every time he walked past that door and heard his daughters laughing, actually laughing, it broke something inside him. Something he'd worked years to build. Control, distance, the belief that emotions made you weak. He'd spent his whole life believing that money and power could solve anything. Now a woman with nothing was proving him wrong. It ate at him. On the 7th day, he found Brenda in the kitchen writing a list. Balloons, streamers, rainbow cake ingredients. He stood in the doorway watching her. She hadn't noticed him yet. "You're really doing this?" he said. Brenda looked up. No surprise, no fear, just that same calm she always carried. "Yes, they have less than a week left." His voice was harder than he meant it to be. "You're setting them up for disappointment." Brenda set down her pen. "No, Mr. Graham. I'm giving them something to look forward to. There's a difference. What if they don't make it? What if they do?" Leonard's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You don't understand what it's like to watch someone you love slip away. To know you can't stop it." Brenda's eyes flickered with something, pain maybe, but she didn't look away. "You're right," she said quietly. "I don't understand what that's like." The lie hung in the air between them. Leonard could feel it. But he didn't push. "I'm their father," he said. "I know what's best for them." "Then why haven't you spent more than 5 minutes in their room this week?" The words hit like a punch. Leonard stared at her, anger rising in his chest. "How dare you? I'm not trying to hurt you, Mr. Graham." Brenda's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm trying to help you see them. Really see them. Before it's too late." Leonard's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to yell, to fire her, to throw her out, but he couldn't. Because deep down he knew she was right. He turned and walked away without another word. That afternoon, Brenda wheeled the girls out to the garden again. Leonard watched from his office window. He told himself he was just checking, making sure they were safe. But really, he was watching the way Brenda knelt beside Adrielle, pointing at a butterfly. The way Diana reached out to touch a flower. The way Abigail tilted her face toward the sun, eyes closed, smiling. His daughters. When was the last time he'd really looked at them? Not at their diagnosis, not at their monitors, at them. He pressed his hand against the glass. Below, Brenda glanced up. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just held his gaze. And in that look, Leonard saw something that terrified him. She wasn't here to save his daughters. She was here to save him. He turned away from the window, his heart pounding. Outside, the girls laughed, and Leonard Graham, the man who controlled billions, felt more powerless than he ever had in his life. The morning of day 9, Leonard woke to silence. No laughter, no voices. His chest tightened. He threw on his robe and rushed down the hall. The medical wing door was open. Inside, the beds were empty. Panic hit him like ice water. "Where are they? Where are my daughters?" Mrs. Carter appeared in the hallway. "They're in the dining room, Mr. Graham, with Miss Anderson." Leonard didn't wait. He walked fast, his heart pounding. When he reached the dining room, he stopped. The table was covered with paper and crayons. Brenda sat in the middle, surrounded by all 3 girls. They were drawing, making birthday cards. Diana held up hers, a wobbly rainbow. "Look, Daddy, for our party." Abigail's had flowers. "Miss Brenda said we can each make one." Even Adrielle was coloring, her small hand moving slowly but deliberately across the paper. Leonard stood frozen in the doorway. This room, he'd locked it after Catherine died. Couldn't stand to look at it. Too many memories, too much pain. Now it was full of color, full of life. Brenda looked up at him. "We needed more space. I hope that's okay." Leonard couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. Diana slid off her chair and walked toward him. Walked on her own. She took his hand. Daddy, will you help me finish mine? He looked down at his daughter, her bald head, her pale skin, but her eyes were bright. Alive. He nodded, slowly sat down beside her. Brenda handed him a crayon without a word. They sat there for an hour. Leonard drew clumsy flowers beside Diana's rainbow, listened to Abigail talk about what dress she wanted to wear, watched Adrielle smile as she colored a sun. And somewhere in that hour, something inside him cracked. When the girls got tired, Brenda helped them back to their room for rest. Leonard stayed behind, staring at the drawings scattered across the table. Brenda returned a few minutes later. She started gathering the crayons. My wife used to sit here, Leonard said quietly. Every Sunday morning, she'd make pancakes. The girls would draw pictures while we waited. Brenda stopped, listened. After she died, I couldn't. I locked this room. Couldn't face it. His voice broke. I've been so afraid of losing them that I forgot to be their father. Brenda sat down across from him. It's not too late, is it? He looked at her, his eyes red. They're dying, Brenda. The doctor said a lot of things. Brenda's voice was gentle but firm. But your daughters are still here, still fighting. And they need you in that fight. Leonard covered his face with his hands. I don't know how. Brenda reached across the table and placed her hand over his. You just show up, she whispered. That's all. You just keep showing up. Leonard looked at her through tears. And for the first time since Catherine died, he let himself cry. Brenda didn't move, didn't speak, just sat with him in his grief. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. Inside, a father began to heal. The morning of their birthday arrived. Leonard woke early. His heart was heavy. He barely slept. 10 days ago, Dr. Morrison had given them 2 weeks. Today was day 10. His daughters were still alive. He walked downstairs and stopped at the dining room door. Inside, Brenda had transformed everything. Balloons hung from the ceiling. Streamers in every color covered the walls. The table was set with plates and candles, and in the center, a 6-layer rainbow cake. Each layer a different color. Leonard's breath caught. What is this? His voice came out rough. Brenda turned. She wore a simple dress, her hair pulled back. It's a birthday party, Mr. Graham. Your daughters are 7 today. They might not. He stopped himself, looked at the cake, the decorations, the love poured into every detail. They're here, Brenda said softly. That's what matters. An hour later, the girls came down. Diana wore a blue dress. Abigail wore yellow. Adrielle wore pink. They were thin, bald, still so fragile, but they were smiling. Leonard stood against the wall, his arms crossed, trying to hold himself together. Mrs. Carter brought in the cake, candles lit. 7 small flames flickering in the light. The girls stood together, holding each other up. Make a wish, Brenda said. Diana looked at her sisters, then at Leonard. Daddy, will you help us blow them out? Leonard's chest tightened. He couldn't move. Brenda's eyes met his across the room. Gentle, steady. He walked forward, knelt beside his daughters. Ready? Diana whispered. Leonard nodded. He couldn't speak. They leaned in together, all 4 of them, and blew. The candles went out. The room erupted in applause. Mrs. Carter wiped tears from her face. Even the nurse standing in the corner was crying. But Leonard didn't hear any of it. All he saw were his daughters, alive, laughing here. He pulled them close, all 3 of them, and he broke. Sobs tore from his chest, deep raw years of grief pouring out. I'm sorry, he choked. I'm so sorry. I've been so afraid of losing you that I forgot to love you. Diana wrapped her small arms around his neck. It's okay, Daddy. Abigail pressed her face against his shoulder. We love you, Adrielle whispered. Don't cry, Daddy. We're still here. Leonard held them tighter, his whole body shaking. Across the room, Brenda stood with her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. This moment, this impossible, beautiful moment, was everything she'd fought for. Leonard looked up at her through his tears. "Thank you," he mouthed. Brenda nodded, smiled through her tears. And in that room, surrounded by balloons and cake and laughter, a father learned what he'd been too broken to see. His daughters didn't need him to save them. They just needed him to love them while there was still time. That night, Leonard didn't go back to his office. He stayed. He sat in the chair beside their beds, watching them sleep, their breathing steady, their faces peaceful. For the first time in months, he wasn't afraid to be close to them. Diana stirred, opened her eyes halfway. "Daddy. I'm here, sweetheart." She smiled. "You stayed. I'm not going anywhere." His voice cracked. "Not anymore." She closed her eyes again, her hand reaching for his. He held it, feeling how small and fragile it was. He'd spent so much time running, hiding in his office, making calls, trying to control what couldn't be controlled. But Brenda was right. All they needed was him, present here. The next morning, something shifted in the house. Leonard didn't retreat to his office. He had breakfast with the girls, sat with them while Brenda read stories, helped them with their drawings. He was clumsy at first, didn't know what to say, how to just be, but they didn't care. Diana asked him to help her color. Abigail wanted him to braid the wig she wore sometimes. Adrielle just wanted him to sit close. And Leonard did. One afternoon, he found Brenda in the hallway folding blankets. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. Brenda looked up. "For what? For fighting you? For not trusting you?" He paused. "For not seeing what you were really doing." Brenda smiled softly. "You were protecting them. That's all you knew how to do. You taught me something better." His voice was thick. "You taught me how to love them." Brenda's eyes filled with tears. She didn't speak, just nodded. That evening, Leonard sat in the garden with the girls. The sun was setting, casting golden light over everything. Abigail leaned against his shoulder. Diana played with a flower in her hand. Adrielle sat in his lap, quiet but content. "Daddy," Diana said, "are we going to be okay?" Leonard's throat tightened. He wanted to lie, to promise them forever. But he'd learned something in the last 2 weeks. Truth wrapped in love was better than false hope. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said gently. "But I know we're together, and that's what matters." Diana thought about that, then nodded. "Okay." They sat in silence, watching the sky turn pink and orange. Leonard closed his eyes, felt the weight of his daughters against him, the warmth of the fading sun. He whispered a prayer, something he hadn't done since Catherine died. "Please, if you're listening, give us more time." The wind stirred the trees, and for a moment, everything felt still, sacred, like God was close enough to hear. But Leonard didn't know. In 2 days, everything would shatter. 2 nights later, the storm came. Winter hit Connecticut hard. Snow fell thick and fast. The wind howled against the windows, rattling the glass. By evening, the power flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The emergency generator kicked in, but the house felt isolated, cut off from the world. Leonard checked on the girls. They were sleeping. Brenda sat in the chair between their beds, knitting by lamplight. "Storm's getting worse," he said quietly. Brenda nodded. "We'll be fine." Around midnight, Adrielle woke with a fever. Brenda felt her forehead. Her skin was burning. "Leonard," she called. Her voice was calm, but urgent. He was there in seconds. "What's wrong?" "She's spiking. We need to cool her down." They worked together. Cold towels, ice. But Adrielle's temperature kept climbing. Her breathing became shallow, labored. Leonard grabbed his phone. No signal. He tried the landline. "Dead." "I'll drive to the hospital." "You won't make it 10 feet in this snow." Brenda's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Adrielle's lips started turning blue. Diana and Abigail woke, their eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong with Addie?" Leonard knelt beside Adrielle's bed. "Baby, stay with me. Please stay with me." But her eyes were rolling back. Her breathing stopped. The monitor flatlined. No! Leonard's voice broke. No, no, no! Brenda pushed him aside. She tilted Adrielle's head back, started compressions. Her hands moved fast, counting under her breath. Come on, sweetheart. Come back. 30 seconds. A minute. Leonard grabbed Adrielle's hand. Please, baby. I just found you again. Don't leave me. Please. Brenda kept going, tears streaming down her face, her voice cracking as she counted. Breathe, baby. Breathe. Your daddy needs you. Your sisters need you. 2 minutes. Leonard collapsed, his forehead pressed against Adrielle's chest. God, please take me instead. Please, not her. Diana and Abigail were sobbing. Addie, wake up. Brenda's hands never stopped, but her voice broke. Not you. Not you too, Naomi. She caught herself, gasped, kept going. Come back, sweetheart. Please come back. 3 minutes, then a cough. Small, weak, but real. Adrielle's eyes fluttered open. Leonard's head shot up. She's breathing. Oh God. She's breathing. He pulled her into his arms, sobbing into her hair. You're here. You're still here. Brenda collapsed back into the chair, her whole body shaking. Leonard looked at her through his tears. You called her Naomi. Who's Naomi? Brenda's face crumbled. She covered her mouth with her hand, tears pouring down. My daughter, she whispered. She was 6. Leukemia 5 years ago. Leonard's breath caught. Oh God, Brenda. I couldn't save her. Brenda's voice broke. I held her just like this, but she didn't come back. She looked at Adrielle, alive in Leonard's arms. I promised her that night. I'd never let another child feel alone in the fight. Leonard reached out, took Brenda's hand. You kept your promise, he whispered. You saved her. You saved all of us. And in that moment, surrounded by storm and darkness, they understood. Healing wasn't just for the dying. It was for the living who'd forgotten how. 5 years later, spring came early to Connecticut. The Graham estate looked different now. The gardens were full of color, roses, tulips, wild flowers everywhere. The windows stayed open. Music played from somewhere inside, and laughter, always laughter. Diana, Abigail, and Adrielle, now 12 years old, ran through the grass, their hair long and wild, their voices loud and free. No more hospital beds, no more monitors, no more fear, just life. Inside the kitchen, Brenda stood at the counter mixing batter for a rainbow cake. Leonard walked in, flour already on his shirt from helping earlier. He smiled. They're asking when it's ready. Tell them patience is a virtue, Brenda said, laughing. Leonard leaned against the counter, watching her work. You know, I never thanked you properly. Brenda looked up. For what? For saving my daughters. For saving me. Brenda shook her head gently. I didn't save anyone, Leonard. I just reminded you all that love is stronger than fear. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. You gave me my family back. You gave me myself back. Brenda's eyes filled with tears. And you gave me a reason to keep my promise. The kitchen door burst open. Diana, Abigail, and Adrielle rushed in, breathless and grinning. Is it ready yet? Diana asked. Almost, Brenda said, wiping her eyes quickly. Adrielle, once the weakest, now the loudest, grabbed Leonard's hand. Dad, come outside. We want to show you something. Leonard let them pull him toward the door. He glanced back at Brenda. She smiled, nodded. He followed his daughters into the garden. They led him to a small tree they planted last fall. Tied to one of the branches was a ribbon, and hanging from the ribbon, a small wooden sign. Leonard leaned closer, reading the carved letters. For Naomi, who taught us that love never dies. It just grows. His throat tightened. He looked at Brenda, who'd followed them outside. They wanted to honor her, Brenda whispered. The girl who started it all. Leonard pulled his daughters close, all 3 of them. Then he reached out and pulled Brenda in two. They stood there together, a family built not by blood, but by love that refused to quit. Above them, the sky was clear and blue. Somewhere beyond the clouds, a little girl named Naomi was smiling. Because her mother's love hadn't ended when she died. It had multiplied. That evening, they gathered around the table. The rainbow cake sat in the center, candles lit. But this time, the candles were for Brenda. "Happy birthday, Miss Brenda!" the girls shouted. Brenda covered her face, laughing and crying at the same time. Leonard raised his glass. 5 years ago, you walked into our lives when we'd given up. You didn't bring medicine. You brought hope. You didn't save us with science. You saved us by teaching us how to live. He looked at her, his eyes full. To Brenda, the woman who did the impossible. To Brenda, everyone echoed. Brenda closed her eyes, made a wish, and blew out the candles. When she opened her eyes, she looked around the table at Diana's bright smile, Abigail's gentle eyes, Audrielle's fierce grin, Leonard's grateful face. This was her promise kept. This was her healing, too. Later that night, after the girls had gone to bed, Leonard and Brenda stood on the porch watching the stars. "Do you think she sees this?" Leonard asked quietly. "Naomi." Brenda looked up at the sky. "I know she does." Leonard took her hand. "Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for learning how to fight," Brenda whispered. They stood in comfortable silence. And somewhere between heaven and earth, love whispered back, "Well done,